No one could have predicted that a simple night meant to blow off steam would become the turning point that would completely change Emily Reyes' life. A young woman who had just moved from the countryside to the coastal city of California to start fresh. It was her last night of freedom before officially starting work as a housekeeper at a luxury seaside villa, where her cousin Chloe had been working as a cook for years. After a simple dinner, Chloe insisted they go out to a bar. "Before you throw yourself into cleaning rooms, you need to at least know what fun feels like," Chloe said as they stepped into an upscale beachside bar. Emily wasn't used to loud music, flashing lights, or the thick scent of alcohol in the air. But under Chloe's playful insistence, she reluctantly sipped a few light cocktails. Her lips finally curved into a smile, and the atmosphere no longer felt so suffocating. That's when her eyes met his. He stood by the bar in a white shirt, sleeves casually rolled, tousled hair, and eyes that were sharp yet magnetic. Emily couldn't take her eyes off him, and to her surprise, he was already looking back at her. Chloe nudged her teasingly. "Sweetie, someone's definitely into you." Emily tried to brush it off, but her heart was racing faster than normal. Before she could fully process it, the man had walked over, smiled faintly, and extended his hand. "Care to dance?" She didn't remember how many songs they danced to. What she remembered was the feel of his hand on her waist, firm but gentle. His voice, deep, calm, unfamiliar, asked simple questions. Her name, where she was from, what she liked. Somehow, Emily felt oddly safe, as if she'd known him for much longer than a single hour. After a while, he suggested they step outside. The music had become too loud. She nodded. They walked to his car, a sleek black SUV parked just outside the door. Everything happened too fast, too dreamlike. A few soft words, a brush of fingers, and then a kiss, unexpected, but so consuming. She didn't know how, but soon enough they were tangled in each other's arms in the back seat. It wasn't love, it was impulse. A reckless spark lit by too much emotion, too much liquor, and too little control. When she woke up, the sun had already risen. Emily opened her eyes in panic, finding herself wrapped in a towel, alone in the vehicle. The man was gone. All that remained was a jacket on the seat and the faint scent of his cologne. No name, no phone number, no trace except the heavy shame crashing down in her chest. She hurriedly got dressed quickly before he woke up, her head pounding. Inside her was a storm of confusion she couldn't put into words. "What the hell just happened, Emily?" she whispered to herself as she stepped out of the car and closed the door behind her. She had never felt so hollow in her life. She thought everything would fade into a forgotten night, but fate always finds its own way to make us face the very things we try to run from. The first morning she got her new job. "This is your room. Mine's right next door," Chloe said as she led Emily into the small second-floor bedroom of the villa. "This place is way fancier than the last one I worked at. The owner is picky, but he pays well. As long as we work hard, there's no problem." Emily gave a faint smile, her eyes scanning the modest but clean space with a window overlooking the garden. This would be her temporary home. A fresh start, she told herself. The next morning, Emily helped Chloe prepare breakfast for the staff. She was introduced to the others working in the villa: Ms. Grace, the longtime housekeeper, Maria, who handled laundry, and Ben, the gardener. Usually, the staff didn't interact much with the owner, but that day, Ms. Grace made an announcement. "Mr. Liam Montgomery is returning today from an extended business trip. Everyone, please be on your best behavior. He notices everything." That name made Emily pause. Liam? No, it couldn't be. Just a coincidence. But all her doubts vanished the moment the grand doors swung open and he walked in. She recognized him instantly. Dark suit, tall frame, cold yet magnetic gaze. He was the man from that night. Emily froze. Her heart pounded in her chest as Liam walked through the marble hall like he owned the air around him. He strode past the staff, giving a slight nod, his eyes gliding over her without stopping. He didn't recognize her. She exhaled, a mix of relief and pain washing over her. "Emily, are you okay? You look pale," Chloe whispered beside her. "I'm fine, just a bit dizzy," she lied. The rest of that morning, Emily worked in a daze. Every time she walked past the hallway or glanced into the living room, her eyes betrayed her, always drawn back to him, even though he paid her no attention at all. Her mind echoed the same question. How could he not remember, not recognize her? That night had burned itself into her memory. But to him, was it just another fleeting encounter? Around noon, while Emily was wiping down the kitchen counter, the door swung open. She looked up, and this time their eyes met. His gaze hesitated, his brows slightly furrowed, as if he was trying to place her. Her heart stopped. But seconds later, Liam turned away, grabbed a glass of water, and walked out like nothing happened. Emily stood there, stunned, her hand gripping the dish towel. Part of her felt relieved to be invisible, but another part ached deeply. Why didn't he remember? She wasn't expecting anything from him. Not love, not responsibility. But the way he looked at her, like she was a stranger, made her feel small and foolish, like that night never existed. Swallowing her emotions, she forced herself to keep working. Her first day at the Montgomery villa ended in a sleepless night, lying in bed, whispering to herself, "If he doesn't remember, then what am I in this story?" It had been over a week since Emily officially started working at the Montgomery villa. Each day passed with her carefully avoiding Liam's gaze, keeping her distance, doing her job like a ghost in the background. But her body had started betraying her. At first, it was just a strange fatigue she couldn't explain. Then came the nausea, especially in the mornings. But what truly startled her were the late-night hunger pangs. They woke her up like a siren in the middle of the night, urging her to eat as if something inside her was crying out to be fed. She kept it all to herself, said nothing to Chloe, complained to no one. She endured silently, like she always had. But things became more serious when she nearly collapsed while scrubbing the kitchen floor. Chloe rushed to catch her, alarmed. "Emily! Oh my God, what's wrong with you?" "I'm fine, just a little tired," she gasped, her face pale. Chloe didn't buy it. She made Emily sit down, handed her a glass of warm water and some crackers. Under her cousin's worried stare, Emily could only offer a weak smile and look away. That night, alone in her room, Emily stared at the ceiling. She knew she couldn't keep pretending. She wasn't naive. These signs were too clear. Her hand rested on her abdomen, and a sting of fear spread from her chest through her entire body. "No, it can't be," she whispered as tears began to fall. She tried to count the days. That night, it was over 3 weeks ago. The nausea, the fatigue, the strange nighttime hunger, all matched. Emily jumped from bed, threw on a jacket, and quietly left the villa. She walked under the pale streetlights to the nearest pharmacy. Her hands trembled as she placed the pregnancy test on the counter. The cashier looked at her with quiet sympathy and said nothing. Back in her room, she locked the door and sat on the floor, tearing open the box with shaking fingers. She followed the instructions, knees pulled tightly to her chest as she waited. 1 line, then 2. Her world crashed around her. Emily covered her face and cried. There was nothing left to deny. She was pregnant, and the father of her child didn't even remember her. Emily sat frozen on her bedroom floor, hands gripping her head, heart pounding wildly inside her chest. The pregnancy test lay right in front of her, 2 red lines, clear and undeniable. She was going to be a mother, but she wasn't ready. She was scared. a kind of fear she had never known before, not just fear of the responsibility, but of the man connected to it all. A man who had no idea. A man who didn't even remember her face. Liam, that man, the one who once made her heart race with a single glance, was now a stranger. They'd never had a real conversation. Never truly knew each other beyond one fleeting night in the dark under the haze of impulse. How could she possibly tell him? How would that even sound? "I'm sorry. I'm the girl from your car that night, and now I'm pregnant. The baby's yours." Just imagining that made her want to disappear from the face of the earth. She didn't want pity. She didn't want to be seen as the kind of girl who traps a man. And more than anything, she didn't think she could bear Liam's indifferent eyes if he heard the truth and felt nothing. No, she couldn't survive that. Emily knew her only choice now was to stay silent. Keep the secret, carry the weight alone, and find a way to leave before things spiraled out of control. In the stillness of the night, she whispered, "I'm sorry, baby." The next morning, Emily woke up with swollen eyes. She stared at herself in the mirror and barely recognized the face looking back. Faded, exhausted, weighed down by fear. Chloe knocked on her door, calling her down for breakfast. She responded faintly, trying to hide how broken she felt. But the moment she stepped out into the hallway, her vision blurred, and she nearly fainted. Chloe caught her just in time and helped her back into the room. "Emily, what's going on with you? You've been pale, nauseous, barely eating. Are you?" Emily lowered her head. She didn't speak. "You're pregnant, aren't you?" That question sliced through every wall she'd tried to build. Emily broke down in tears. She couldn't hold it in anymore. Chloe hugged her tightly. "Whose baby is it?" Emily clenched the hem of her cousin's shirt. She had nowhere left to run. "Liam," she whispered through sobs. The room fell into silence. Chloe slowly pulled back and looked at her in shock. "You mean the boss?" Emily nodded. Chloe sat down on the bed, hands pressed against her temples. "How? When?" Emily told her everything. The night at the bar, the strange coincidence. How she never knew his name, and how he never recognized her. And now this pregnancy was the consequence of a reckless, forgotten night. Chloe was quiet for a long moment. Then she sighed deeply. "You have to tell him, Emily. This isn't something you can keep to yourself." "No, I can't. He doesn't even remember me. To him, I'm just a stranger. If I tell him, he'll think I'm trying to trap him or something." "But it's the truth." "It doesn't matter anymore. I'm going to quit. Leave this place." "Where will you go?" "Back home. I'll find another job. Raise the baby on my own." Chloe looked at her, eyes glassy with emotion. "Do you even know what you're doing?" Emily wiped her tears, trying to steady her breath. "I do. I don't want to get anyone involved. I don't want to cause trouble for him. I just want peace." Chloe said nothing more. She simply pulled Emily into one more embrace, holding her tight. "I won't stop you, but if you change your mind, I'll always be here." Steve? That afternoon, Emily quietly packed her things. Everything fit into a single small suitcase. She wrote a resignation letter and placed it neatly on Ms. Grace's desk. She didn't dare look at Liam again. That night, while the whole house slept, Emily slipped out. She paused for a moment in the garden path. From there, she could see the light still on in the upstairs room, Liam's room. She placed her hand gently on her belly. "I'm sorry, baby. I'm only trying to protect you from uncertainty." Then she walked away without looking back. That entire afternoon, Chloe sat silently in the kitchen, a towel in her hand that she wasn't using. Her gaze was distant, her expression heavy. Emily's confession echoed in her mind like a painful, endless loop. Chloe was a few years older than Emily, but had always treated her like a younger sister. They'd gone through so much together, from their difficult childhood to the decision to move to the coastal city in search of a better life. And now Emily, the sweet, quiet girl who always put others before herself, was carrying a burden far too heavy for her young shoulders. Chloe couldn't bear that thought. As the sky turned gray, she stood up, still gripping the towel in her hand, her heart torn. If she leaves with that secret, I'll never forgive myself. She walked to Liam's office, stood outside the door for a moment, her pulse racing so loud she could almost hear it. "Come in," Liam's voice called from inside, steady as always. Chloe took a deep breath and opened the door. Liam was behind his desk, eyes on his laptop. When he saw her, he looked up. "Is something wrong?" "Mr. Liam, I'm sorry to disturb you, but I need to talk to you about Emily." Chloe noticed the shift in Liam's expression the moment he heard her name. "What about her?" he asked, his tone a shade lower than usual. Chloe stood frozen for a moment, torn between loyalty and truth. But then she made her choice. "Emily, she's pregnant," she said quietly. "And the baby is yours." The air seemed to vanish from the room. Liam froze. He sat up straight, eyes wide with disbelief. What did you say?" "It's true," Chloe said, her voice trembling. "She didn't plan on telling you. She's scared because you don't remember her, and she doesn't want anyone to think she's trying to trap you." Liam shot up from his chair. Why wouldn't she tell me? How long has she known?" "She only confirmed it recently, but I think deep down she knew for a while. I saw it in her eyes, in the nights she couldn't sleep." Liam paced behind his desk, gripping the edge of his chair, trying to process. I didn't recognize her from that night." "She knows," Chloe said gently. "But do you know what hurt her the most? It wasn't that you forgot. It was that she still thought that night mattered. To her, it was real. A memory etched deep, a feeling she's never been able to forget." Chloe's voice cracked. "And now she's planning to leave, with the baby, because she thinks that's what's best for everyone." Liam stared at her, devastated, pale, silent. "Where is she?" he asked, almost shouting. Chloe wiped her eyes. "She's on her way out now. If you don't stop her, you might lose her. Forever." Liam didn't wait another second. He grabbed his coat, bolted out of the office, down the hall, and out of the villa like a man on fire. Chloe stood there, tears trailing down her face. She knew that from this moment on, nothing would ever be the same again. Liam sat frozen in his chair, all the sounds around him fading into silence. His heart pounded violently inside his chest, and the air in the room suddenly felt cold and heavy. Emily, it was her, the girl from that night. For weeks now, ever since he first saw Emily in the villa, he'd felt something strange, like he'd known her from somewhere. A glance, a scent, a familiar silence, but he could never piece it together. Not until Chloe told him the truth. Now, everything came rushing back like shattered pieces of a puzzle falling into place. The girl he had searched for, whose name he didn't know, who left behind no trace, had been right next to him all along, quietly working, quietly hiding something so immense. And now she was pregnant, carrying his child. Liam felt his chest tighten. He hadn't remembered her. He'd been drunk. The night was brief and blurred. But that wasn't an excuse. He had left her alone to carry the weight of it all, while he went on with his life, completely unaware. He felt angry at himself, regretful, desperate to turn back time. "I had her once, and I let her slip through my fingers." Now he didn't just want to keep her because of the baby. He wanted to keep her because of her, the girl who had quietly walked into his life and disappeared like a dream. And he wasn't going to let that happen again. Emily had just stepped out of the taxi at the central bus station when a light rain began to fall. She pulled up her coat collar, clutching her small suitcase, heart weighed down with emotion. She was finally leaving. Away from the villa, from Liam's gaze, from all the memories that made her feel so painfully exposed. Just as her foot touched the first step of the bus, a voice tore through the drizzle. "Emily!" Her breath caught. Her world stopped. For a moment, the rain disappeared. The people vanished. Only that voice remained. For a split second, her heart stopped beating. She turned. And there, through the scattered crowd and falling rain, Liam was walking toward her, face tight, hair tousled by the wind. "What? What are you doing here?" Liam didn't answer. He closed the distance quickly and grabbed her hand before she could move. "Let go. Liam, I have to go." "No, you're not going anywhere." "Please?" "Chloe told me everything." Emily stood still. The world around her blurred. All she could hear was the sound of rain and the deafening thud of her heart. "I'm sorry," she whispered, voice cracking. "You didn't even remember me. That night meant nothing to you. But to me, it changed everything. It made me feel like I was just a passing moment, a mistake." Liam tightened his grip gently. "Don't ever call yourself that." "But it's true," she choked. "You didn't recognize me. To you, that night was just a careless moment. But for me, it changed everything." "And you thought running away was the answer?" "I didn't want to bother you. I didn't want you to feel trapped by this baby. I'll raise it on my own." "Emily," Liam looked at her, voice low. "I don't know why I didn't recognize you sooner, but ever since you walked into that villa, something about you pulled me in. I couldn't stop watching you." She let out a half laugh through tears. "Just instinct? Maybe, but now I know, and you're not leaving." "I won't let you." Emily shook her head. "You can't force me. You have your own life. I'm just the mother of my child." Those words hit her like a wave. Her breath caught, hands trembling. "What do you want?" she asked, voice barely a whisper. "I want you to stay, not just for the baby, but for us. For me. So I can learn to love you the right way, every single day, if you'll let me." Emily looked into his eyes. There was no pity in them, no guilt, just honesty, and something deeper she had never seen before. She burst into tears, and for the first time since she found out she was pregnant, she felt light. Emily returned to the Montgomery estate the next morning after a night full of tears at the bus station. She didn't say much. She simply walked in, her fingers tightly wrapped around Liam's. An unspoken promise. No one in the house asked anything. Perhaps they saw it all in Liam's eyes, no longer cold, but soft, protective, filled with purpose. Ms. Grace simply smiled and led Emily back to her old room. From that day forward, Liam changed completely. He was no longer the distant, work-obsessed man. He became attentive, checking in on Emily's meals, her sleep, and the sudden dizziness that came and went. He took her to her prenatal checkups, sat beside her in the waiting room, and held her hand when they heard the baby's heartbeat for the first time. More than once, Emily felt like she was dreaming. The same man who once barely noticed her now looked at her as if she was everything. But her worries hadn't vanished. There were still nights she'd lie with her back turned to him, eyes wide open. She was afraid that things would change when the baby arrived, that Liam was only doing this out of obligation, that the gap between a wealthy man like him and a housemaid like her would always remain. One evening, Emily sat alone in the garden, hands resting on her belly. Liam approached quietly, draped his jacket over her shoulders. "You're overthinking again, aren't you?" he asked softly. Emily said nothing. "You think I'm doing all this out of duty?" he continued. This time she nodded, just slightly, but enough for him to feel the sting. Liam sat down beside her, searching for her hand. "I can't force you to believe me, but I can prove it to you every single day." Emily turned to him, eyes glassy. "Why me? You could have anyone." He smiled gently, shaking his head. "No one else makes me feel this kind of peace." A breeze swept by. She leaned into him, for the first time in weeks, allowing herself to fall into someone's arms. From that moment on, Emily stopped hiding how she felt. She smiled more, talked to Liam more. They picked out baby clothes together, read parenting books, debated baby names. She slowly began to feel like she belonged in his world. They didn't make a big announcement. No labels, no need for attention. Just two people, once lost to each other, now choosing to hold on tightly. And the baby growing inside Emily became the quiet, unbreakable thread that tied their hearts together in the gentlest, most enduring way. Word of Emily's pregnancy, and that Liam was the father, eventually reached the Montgomery family. One quiet weekend afternoon, as Emily was preparing tea in the kitchen, Miss Grace walked in with a strange expression. "Emily, Mrs. Evelyn, Liam's mother, is here at the villa." Emily froze. Her heart pounded. She had never met Liam's mother, but she'd heard plenty. A regal, strong-willed woman who loved her son fiercely and protected her family's legacy. Someone not easily swayed by the unconventional. When Mrs. Evelyn entered the living room, Emily stood behind the door, hands trembling. She didn't glance around. She looked straight at her son. "Liam, is it true? This girl, the baby?" Liam didn't flinch. He took Emily's hand and stepped forward, pulling her gently beside him. "It's true, Mother. Emily is the woman I love. And the baby, your grandchild." Silence filled the room. Emily kept her gaze lowered, her fingers clinging to the fabric of her blouse. "What did you do before working here?" Mrs. Evelyn asked, her voice calm but clear. Emily answered softly. "I was a cashier at a bakery back home. Then I came here." The older woman nodded slightly, not with scorn, but not with warmth either. "My son has a career, a reputation, a name. Do you realize what you bring into his life is not just a child, but a complete shift in course?" Emily didn't know how to respond. Liam held her hand tighter. "Mother," he said quietly, "it's a shift I chose. I don't need approval. I only need you to understand that I'm happy." Mrs. Evelyn stood in silence for a long time. Finally, her eyes softened, just slightly, but enough to see the mother beneath the matriarch. She turned to Emily. "You stayed silent. You didn't ask for anything. That I respect." She walked closer, very close, and for the first time she extended her hand, resting it gently over Emily's. "If my son has chosen you, I won't turn away, but as a mother, I'll need time." Emily's eyes brimmed with tears. She bowed her head. "Thank you. That means everything." The door to a family began to open, not fully, not yet, but it was a beginning filled with quiet hope. After Mrs. Evelyn left the villa, the living room remained quiet. Emily stood still for a long time, as if her legs had lost all strength. She couldn't believe. Everything had gone like that. She had prepared herself for a look of disdain, for cold words, maybe even outright rejection. But instead, what she received was a calm gaze, a meaningful touch on the hand, and a vague yet sincere promise. "I won't turn my back." Emily sat down, one hand resting on her belly. Her heart was still trembling. All her life, she'd been used to being underestimated. A quiet worker, someone who didn't cause trouble. Someone from whom no one expected much. And yet here she was, an ordinary girl, sitting in a luxurious villa, holding the hand of the man she loved, and being acknowledged by his mother as part of their family. Why her? Did she deserve this? The answer came when Liam gently walked over and sat beside her, silently taking her hand once more. He didn't need to speak. That quiet squeeze of her fingers said everything. For the first time in months, Emily no longer felt like an outsider. Maybe this was fate. That evening at sunset, the sky was painted in soft hues of orange and gold, and the sea breeze danced gently through Emily's hair as she walked barefoot across the warm sand. Emily walked slowly along the flower-strewn aisle, her bare feet sinking softly into the warm sand. Her simple silk gown flowed around her gently curved figure, elegant in its purity. With every step she took, memories returned, of that fateful night, of silent tears, of a love that bloomed from the unlikeliest of places. The ceremony took place right by the beach behind the Montgomery estate, with only a few close friends and family in attendance. It wasn't extravagant or showy, but it was warm, heartfelt, and deeply intimate. Liam stood beneath an arch of white flowers, eyes never leaving Emily. In his gaze was everything: love, gratitude, and a silent promise to never let go. Emily walked up to him, her hand slipping into his like it had always belonged there. No one cried at the ceremony, but everyone felt it deeply. It wasn't just a wedding, it was a closing chapter to a stormy journey, now sealed with compassion and love. As the officiant read the vows, Emily looked up at Liam, eyes glossy but steady. She remembered everything: the fateful night in the car, the mornings of silent nausea, the panic of holding a positive pregnancy test, and the moment she nearly disappeared from his life. All of it, like a long, vivid dream. And now she was no longer afraid of the future, because the future was standing right in front of her, holding her hand, placing a ring on her finger, and kissing her forehead with the tenderness of a man who had truly grown. When the guests had left, Emily and Liam sat together under a string of lanterns by the shoreline. Words were no longer needed, only the hush of the waves and the quiet rhythm of two hearts finding home in each other. Liam leaned in, wrapping his arms around her from behind, his hand resting gently on her belly, where a tiny life was growing each day. He whispered, lips brushing softly against her dress, "Can't wait to meet you, little one."